Shrivallabheti varadeti dayapareti bhaktapriyeti bhavalunthana kovideti natheti nagashayaneti jagannivaseti alapinam pratipadam kurume mukunda. Krishnam Narayanam Vande Krishnam Vande Vrajapriyam Krishnam Dvaipayanam Vande Krishnam Vande Vrajasutam Pratasutam Satchidananda Rupaya Vishwotpatyadi Hetave Tapatraya Vinashaya Shri Krishnaya Vayam Numaha. We have started to relish the summum bonum of Srimad Bhagavatam, Dashamaskanda. Dashamaskanda begins on a very interesting note with a series of questions from Parikshit. Now, just like how in the Gita, Arjuna asks all the right questions on our behalf, Parikshit does the same. We concluded last week with Parikshit's ardent request to Shukabhrahma. Parikshit requests, Avatirya Yador Vamshe Bhagavan Bhuta Bhavanaha Kritavan Yani Vishwatma Tanino Vada Vistarad. After having listened to Shuka's summary on Yaduvamsha, on Chandravamsha, where Shuka did a rapid fire round on covering the entire Krishnavatara. Parikshit obviously was not expecting that, and therefore now he puts forward his ardent request. So Parikshit starts with an expression of his gratitude. This is something which is very important and foundational. Parikshit, right at the beginning, expresses his gratitude to Shuka. What we need to understand, repeatedly we see how gratitude plays a very important role, a foundational role for any spiritual journey. Happiness is not about increasing what we have. Happiness is about increasing our appreciation for what we have. And Parikshit demonstrates this attitude of gratitude. And he requests Shuka to explain in detail Krishna Katha. Atimanusha Shila Vritta Veshehi Ativrittamara Vikrama Pratapaihi Atilangita Sarvaloka Samyam Varaye Vaishnava Vaibhavavataram. The illustrious Kuresha declares, Atilangita Sarvaloka Samyam Varaye Vaishnava Vaibhavavataram. Atilangita Sarvaloka Samyam. Krishna's cheshtitas, the avatar cheshtitas of Bhagavan, are matchless. And he has no equal or superior. Why, we may ask? Atimanusha Shila Vritta Veshaihi Ativrittamara Vikrama Pratapaihi, he says. In the Krishnavatara, we get to relish Atimanusha Shila of Bhagavan, Atimanusha Vritta of Bhagavan, Atimanusha Vesha of Bhagavan. Now, this is what Parikshit also wants to know. Atimanusha Shila. What is Atimanusha Shila? Suprahuman character. Parikshit begins with his demonstration of gratitude. We see also in Krishnavatara, Krishna's expression of gratitude throughout the Avatara. Bhagavan's every cheshtita in a way is an expression of his gratitude towards his bhakta. So we all think a bhakta has to express his gratitude to Bhagavan. On the contrary, throughout Krishnavatara we see Bhagavan expressing his gratitude to his bhakta. No, if a bhakta turns a little bit and looks at Bhagavan, it seems Bhagavan is immensely pleased. Throughout every cheshtita, we know Krishna's gratitude towards Draupadi, Krishna's gratitude towards Arjuna, Krishna's gratitude towards Sudama, Krishna's gratitude towards the Pandavas, Krishna's gratitude towards Devaki and Vasudeva, Krishna's gratitude towards the Go, Krishna's gratitude towards Gokula, Krishna's gratitude towards Go Mandala, Krishna's gratitude towards Yashoda, Krishna's gratitude towards Gopikas. Every cheshtita of Krishna is an expression of his gratitude. That is the Atimanusha Sheela. Now, why it is Atimanusha? Gratitude is also a value that humans have to practice. It is Atimanusha not because humans cannot practice it. It is Atimanusha because humans will not practice it. Knowing that it is important, we do not practice certain fundamental values. That is why Bhagavan takes avatars and repeatedly demonstrates to us how to practice certain fundamental human values. Atimanusha Sheela. Atimanusha Vritta. Krishnavatara is filled with Atimanusha Vritta. Atima, supra-human conduct. You know, everything that Krishna does is Atimanusha. You know, Putana, Shakata, Arishta Bhanjana, Govardhana Giri Dharana, Kalinga Mardhana. The list can go on and on and on. You know, Atimanusha Vritta. Atimanusha Vesha, Atimanusha Rupa, that divine Divya Mangala Vigraha, he is Bhuvana Sundara. Krishna is Atimanohara, he is Bhuvana Sundara. Shutvan Gunan Bhuvana Sundara Shunvatante. Rukmini calls out to Krishna, hey Bhuvana Sundara, you are the beauty of all beauties. We see Krishna, how he captivates not just human beings, every living being through his magnetic beauty. So Parikshit therefore here is thirsting for Atimanusha Sheela, Atimanusha Vritta, Atimanusha Vesha of Krishna, and therefore he looks at Shukha and says, Shukha, I did not expect an executive summary from you. Please dive deep. After 9 cantos of Bhagavatam, Parikshit now knows he is longing for Krishna Katha. Yesterday, there was a question that was asked in the satsang. How do we cultivate bhakti for Krishna, love for Krishna? Essentially, the question is, how can we rise in love? With Krishna, we don't fall in love. We rise in love. How can we rise in love? It all begins with repetition. Repetition creates that momentum for attraction. We all know somebody who doesn't even know cricket, he or she watches one IPL season, they become cricket mad. Repetition creates momentum for attraction. This is the universal law. So therefore, repetition is fundamental. Repeatedly listening to Krishna's glories is fundamental, that creates attraction. But the beauty of repetition of Krishna Katha is it leads to the next process of inner cleansing. Krishna is a great purifier. In the process of repetition, there is also inner purification that keeps going on. We are all inseparable from Krishna. We are all connected with him. But why don't we recognize it? Because of layers and layers and layers of dirt that we have accumulated over several janmas. And these layers of impurities have to be purified. But who can purify it for us? Krishna only can purify it for us. Therefore, repetition leads to inner purification. And when inner purification happens, there is a sweet revelation. Krishna himself reveals himself to us, and that revelation is so very sweet and subtle that inner purification results in that blossoming of that love for him in us through his sweet revelation. He reveals his all attractiveness to us, and when that sweet revelation happens, elevation automatically happens. The acceleration of our love for Krishna happens. Therefore, how can we rise in love for Krishna? Through repetition, through inner purification, through sweet revelation, and through elevation. R-I-S-E, rise. Now, Krishna ensures that He does everything for us for our upliftment. And therefore, here, Parikshit now therefore is looking at Shuka and says, hey Shuka, Nivrittatasher upagiyamanad bhavaushadachotra manobhiramat ka uttama shloka gunanuvadat puman virajyeta vinapashugnat. Already now, Parikshit understands the value and the significance of Krishna Katha. And therefore, he says, hey Shuka, I very well know by now, Nivrittatasher upagiyamanat, he says. He asks a question, he answers. Who can relish the nectar of Krishna Katha? That's the question. Who can relish? The answer is Nivrittatasher upagiyamanat. Those who are devoid of any material attachments. And then he goes on to say, Bhavaushada chotra manobhiramat. And what is the right medicine for the illness of samsara? Obviously, Krishna Katha, Krishna is the right medicine. Now, here, interestingly, there are two statements made here. Two questions and two answers. The first question, who can relish Krishna Katha? The answer is those who have attained freedom from all kinds of material attachments. Those who are free from their infinite longings for bodily gratification. How can one obtain this freedom from all material attachments? Is the second question. By listening to Krishna Katha is the answer. Krishna is Taraka Poshaka Bhogya. This is the beauty. It is like, when we have a stomach disorder, no appetite, and we get weaker and weaker. And then, in that state, even if nectar is served, we cannot relish. So therefore, for these three stages, three different treatments are required. There is one treatment that is required to cure an illness, one treatment that is required for nourishment, another is required for relishing the nectar. We all are afflicted with the disease of samsara, and all the material contaminations are like various kinds of impurities in the mind. We need an antidote, a cure for all the illnesses of samsara. And that cure, that medicine, that curative medicine is Krishna. Not only that, as we keep getting cured, we also have to become healthy. We have to be nourished. Krishna is also that nourishment. And after we get nourished, we also realize that He is the ultimate delight. He is the one who is the most relishable nectar. He is our Taraka, Poshana, Bhogya. And therefore, here Parikshit says, I realize that now. After 9 cantos, Parikshit has realized. Therefore, he says, Ka uttama shloka gunanuvadat. Who will not listen to Krishna Katha? After getting to know Krishna, once we start to know Krishna, there is no way that we cannot start loving Krishna. That knowing Krishna infuses that love, that attraction for Krishna. And Parikshit says, now who will not be ready to listen to Krishna Katha? He says, Puman virajyeta vinapashugnat. Only one who is ready to kill himself, which means one who is ready to doom himself in the darkest ignorance of samsara. Only those people will not be ready. Everybody else are yearning, longing for Krishna Katha. Hey Shukha, don't withhold anymore. I would like to listen from you. And then Parikshit says, Parikshit here also, he is also ecstatic after having listened to 9 skandhas, he also now knows that Shukha is going to partake the nectar through Shukha's mouth. Therefore, he is also ecstatic and he is continuing to express his gratitude. And Parikshit says, Hey Shukha, Pitamaha me samare amaram jayaihi. Devavratadya atiratai timingilaihi durattayam kaurava sainya sagaram kritvataran vatsapadam smayat plavaha. My grandfather Arjuna and his brothers, all the Pandavas, they took shelter of Krishna. And what is the outcome of that shelter? Taking refuge in Krishna, they were easily able to deal with the sharks like Bhishma. He is comparing Kurukshetra to an ocean, and he says there were several Atiratis, Maharatis, several sharks like Bhishma, and my grandfather Arjuna was very easily, effortlessly, he was able to navigate. How did he manage to do that? How did the Pandavas win the battle of Kurukshetra? They crossed this ocean of Kurukshetra just like how one crosses a small puddle of water that is contained in a hoof print of a calf. Kritvataran vatsapadam smayat plavaha. So very effortlessly, it is all because of Krishna Mahima. And then he goes on to say, Draunyastra viplushtam idam madangam santana bijam kuru pandavanam jugopakukshim gata ata chakraha matuschamaya sharanam gataya. Matuschamaya sharanam gataya. How blessed Parikshit was that he was protected by Krishna even before he could see the light of the world. Right when I was in the womb of my mother, Parikshit is now reminded of that Krishna Leela, that Krishna Cheshtita, the wonder of wonders, when Ashwathama hurled Brahmastra, and when that Brahmastra was about to destroy the seed of the Pandavas dynasty, the lineage, it was Krishna who miraculously entered the womb, and with his chakra, he became a protective shield for Parikshit, and he protected Parikshit then and there. He says, it was the outcome of the Sharanagati done by my mother, Uttara. Matuschameye sharanam gataya. So I very much understand the power of Krishna Katha and how Krishna is protecting me all throughout. Therefore, Hey Shukha, let me ask you a list of questions. Now, Parikshit now gives a structure to Shukha. We see how Parikshit also wants every detail to be covered. So, therefore, towards the end of 9th Skanda, Shukha had briefly recounted on the Yaduvamsha and also the Krishna Charita. Now, Parikshit is asking point questions so that he can get the entire detail. Hey Shukha, you said that Sankarshana, Adisesha, entered Devaki's womb. But then, how did Balarama became the son of Rohini? How can this happen? I am not able to understand. On the one hand, Sankarshana entered the womb of Devaki. But then we all know that Balarama is the son of Rohini. How can this miracle happen? What did ensue? Please explain to me. Then he asks, Hey Shukha, why did Krishna immediately after taking birth, why did he leave Devaki and Vasudeva the same night? Why was he not compassionate? Why did he leave his own parents and why did he go all the way to Nanda's house? Please explain to me the reasons. Where did Krishna live in Vraja? Where did he live with all his relatives in Vrindavana? What did Krishna do on Vrajabhumi? I would like to know Krishna's cheshtitas on that sacred land or sacred forest of Vrindavana. When did Krishna move from Vrindavana to Mathura? And why did he kill Kamsa? Kamsa being his uncle, isn't it against Shastras? No, immediately Indologists started making notes. Krishna committed adharma. Immediately. Now, Parikshit is asking those questions. Why did he kill Kamsa and what is the circumstance? And please explain to me that. And then, when did he move out of Mathura? I heard you told me that he moved to Dwaraka And why and when did it happen? What all did he do in Dwaraka? How many years did he live in Dwaraka? And then Parikshit also asks, Hey Shuka, I would also like to know, you also briefly said that Krishna married several women. I would also like to know how and why did he marry? Immediately indulge his note. All these questions, and then he says, please enlighten me. Please enlighten me, Hey Shuka, I would like to know. And he also makes a very important point here. I would like to know the cheshtitas of that Krishna. Who is that Paramatma? Who is that Vasudeva, the Narayana, who is inside us and who is outside us? So therefore, every question that he is asking keeping the fact that Krishna is Narayana. Krishna is the one who is all-pervading Supreme Being. Hey Shuka, please explain to me. And then he says, Etad anyaccha sarvam me mune Krishna vicheshtitam vaktumarhasi sarvajna shaddadhanaya vistritam. Now, after laying out a list of questions, Parikshit is a little worried. I don't want Shuka to just stick to what the questions that I asked. Therefore, he says, Hey Shuka, you are sarvajna. Therefore, you must know everything about what I have asked and what I have not asked. So therefore, don't take my questions as the final set to be answered. I want every little detail. So therefore, etad anyaccha sarvam me mune Krishna vicheshtitam vaktumarhasi sarvajna. And he also says, Shuka, why you should give me this? Shaddadhanaya vistritam. Shaddadhanaya, you know, who else can demonstrate to us on Shraddha, the supreme Shraddha that is required for Krishna Katha. Shraddha is so very foundational. Another value that Krishna repeatedly talks about in the Gita. Many people conclude that Shraddha means narrow-mindedness. What we need to recognize that Shraddha actually is open-mindedness. How can Shraddha lead to open-mindedness? So when we face difficult situations, when we face reversals in life, and it happens. It keeps happening to all of us. All kinds of reversals. We plan something else happens. All kinds of unexpected, unpredictable situations that we encounter. When such reversals happens, our mind quickly and easily degenerates into hopelessness, degenerates into anguish, degenerates into victimization. We all start thinking we are victims and start asking questions like, why it should happen to me? Why the world is against me? Why shouldn't I not give up? Why should I even try anything else? The mind degenerates, and this is where Shraddha really helps. Shraddha is a principle founded on the recognition of the nature of the Supreme Being, who is not only the ultimate controller, but he is also the ultimate benefactor. Thus, Shraddha opens us to an empowering possibility that if something goes out of control, we recognize that things may go out of control, but definitely things cannot go out of all control. Because the ultimate controller is always in control. And he being the ultimate controller, and at the same time, he being Sarvaloka Suhrud, he being my closest benefactor, he being the most lovable and loving Bhagavan, he knows what is good for me. And therefore, even if something goes wrong, there is a higher plan that he is working on for my sake, and thus that Shraddha completely opens our mind from a state of closed, narrow-minded negativity. We open our mind to purpose and positivity. And this is what, and who else can demonstrate this other than Parikshit, who is facing imminent death? Death is knocking on his door, and Parikshit, it is his Shraddha, he knows. Krishna protected me even before I took birth. So let death knock the door. Krishna will answer it. Why should I be worried? He's already protected me, he is protecting me, he will protect me. That is the Shraddha that Parikshit has, and therefore he says, Hey Shuka, Shraddhadhanaya Vistritam. Because of my Shraddha, I think I qualify. In the days of yore, before sitting before acharyas, the Sishyas have to demonstrate that they tick various qualifications, pre-qualifications. That was the kind of the world that was. And Parikshit therefore repeatedly keeps telling Shuka, why I deserve Krishna Katha, He Shuka? I am thirsting, I am wanting, I am longing. He is expressing his thirst for Krishna. Vaktumarhasya seshena divyahyatma vibhutayaha. On the battlefield of Gita, this is the last thing that you will ever expect anybody to ask. There is that battlefield, lakhs of warriors have assembled on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Arjuna is looking at Krishna and says, Vaktumarhasya seshena divyahyatma vibhutayaha. Hey Krishna, I am thirsting to listen to your glories. Please explain to me, give me all your glories. How can anybody ask this kind of a question on a battlefield? We may all think. What has triggered Arjuna to ask this question? If we just rewind a little bit in the same chapter, the 10th chapter, what precedes this Krishna's ardent submission, Arjuna's ardent submission to Krishna is what we celebrate popularly as Chatushloki Gita. Aham sarvasya prabhavaha mattas sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvitaha. Krishna talks about his own swarupa, his own nature, and the moment we get to know his nature, loving him comes as natural. Therefore, after Chatushloki Gita, what we see is the parallel there in the Gita and parallel here in Bhagavatam. The Chatushloki Gita talks about three important topics: Sambandha, Abhidhana, Prayojana. Sambandha means, what is my relationship with Krishna? We all are in a state of ignorance, not knowing our relationship with him. But the moment we understand our intimate relationship with Krishna, then Abhideya means, how do I go about living my life, carrying out my actions, rooted in the knowledge of my relationship with Krishna? That is Abhideya. Third, Prayojana. What is the goal in my life, or should we say, what is the only goal in my life? Now, with clarity, with all these three jnana, Sambandha jnana, Abhideya jnana, Prayojana jnana, which Krishna gives to Arjuna, I shouldn't say falls in love, rises in love with Krishna. And he says, Hey Krishna, Vaktumarhasya seshena divyahyatma vibhutayaha. Please share with me all your glories. I would want to immerse myself in the sweetness, in the nectarine gunanubhava. Same thing is happening to Parikshit. There it was 9 chapters of the Gita. Here it is 9 skandhas of Bhagavata. The 9 chapters of the Gita teach Sambandha, Abhideya, Prayojana. The 9 skandhas of Bhagavata teach the same, and Parikshit now also is deeply, strongly, intimately in love with Krishna, and he is thirsting to know more and more and more. Therefore, Shuka, please start Krishna Katha without any further ado. And he says, Naishati dussaha kshunmam tyaktodamapi bhadate pibantam twan mukham bhoja chutam harikatamritam. We have to see what 9 skandhas of Bhagavatam has done to Parikshit. Now, Parikshit is a great case study. After 9 skandhas, we have to see before and after. Before Bhagavatam, 9 skandhas of Bhagavatam, what was Parikshit's state? Parikshit, what did he do? He was hungry, thirsty, hunting in a forest, and overcome by hunger and thirst. In a moment of weakness, he does an apachara. He takes a snake and puts it on Shamika Muni's head. And this is where all the trouble starts for him. Now, hunger and thirst made him to lose all kinds of discrimination. These are these are some things which trouble each and every one of us. And what happens now after 9 skandhas of Bhagavatam, Parikshit himself says, Naishati dussaha kshunmam tyaktodam apibhadate. Shukha, I am not any more affected by hunger or thirst. I don't want to eat anymore. I don't want to drink anything, not even water. Just give me Krishna Katha. Krishna is my Taraka. Krishna is my Poshaka. Krishna is my Bhogya. And that alone is enough for me. He Shukha Brahma Pibantam Twan Mukham Bhoja Chutam Hari Katamritam. Shukha Brahma with his the Tejasvi who is sitting right in front of Parikshit. The way Shukha recounts Bhagavatam, because Shukha himself is immersed in Krishna Katha. Krishna Katha can be listened when one is immersed in it. The speaker has to be immersed so that the listener can also be immersed. Shukha Brahma is enjoying the nectar of Krishna, and therefore he is looking at the tejas on Shukha Brahma's face. He could see that lotus-like beautiful face which is emanating the radiance that can dispel the darkness of ignorance, and he can see nectar flowing from the lotus-like mouth of Shukha, and therefore he says, let the nectar not just flow, let it flood, and so that let me be inundated in the flood of Krishna Katha, hey Shukha. Shukha then looks at Parikshit and says, Vasudeva Katha Prashnaha Purusham Strin Punatihi Vaktaram Prachakam Shotrims Tatpada Salilam Yata. Now Shukha is looking at Parikshit and says, Shukha, you don't thank me, I have to thank you. Because if Shrotas don't come to listen, what can Vaktas do? He says, I'm always ready to speak Krishna Katha, but I need somebody to listen. And you have, therefore, don't thank me, I should thank you. And he says, Tat Pada Salilam Yata. Just like how Ma Ganga purifies all the 3 lokas. He says, Krishna Katha, Vasudeva Katha Prashnaha, Purusham Strin Punatiti. 3 kinds of Purushas Vasudeva Katha purifies. Who are the 3 kinds? Vaktaram, Prachakam, Shotrims. Vaktaram, the one who speaks Krishna Katha. Prachakam, the one who inquires about Krishna Katha. Shotram, the one who listens. Parikshit inquired, but there are all the rishis sitting there who are also immersed in Krishna Katha, and therefore Shukha says, hey Parikshit, I am immersed in Krishna Katha, you are immersed, everyone around is immersed, therefore all of us have to be thankful, not to each other, to Krishna, because of his Atimanusha Sheela Vritta Veshaihi, Ativrittamara Vikrama Pratapaihi, Atiloka Sarvaloka Samyam, Varaye Vaishnava Vaibhavavataram. He says, and thus Shukha begins to recount that glorious Krishna Charita. Just like how Gita begins with grief, Arjuna Vishada, Krishna Katha also begins in grief. We also saw Bhagavatam also begins in grief. So there is a message. The message is, samsara in a way is grief. Everything begins in samsara as grief, but the beauty is, Gita begins with Vishada, ends with Vijaya. Bhagavatam begins with Vishada, ends with Vijaya. The 10th skandha begins with Vishada, will end with Vijaya. Therefore, our journeys too begins with Vishada, but will end with Vijaya, because it is Krishna who is guiding us all the way. What is the grief here? That the beginning of Krishna Katha. There it was Arjuna Vishada. Here, Bhumata Vishada. Bhumata was in a deep state of sorrow. Bhumata was suffering. Suffering why? Because of the rise of adharma. Krishna in the 16th chapter says, Dambho dadbho vimanascha krodaha parushyamevacha ajnanam chabhijatasya parta sampadamasurim. He says, Dambaha, darpaha, abhimanaha, krodaha, parusham, ajnana. All very, very familiar terms. This is what Kali Yuga is filled with: fraud, hypocrisy, arrogance, egotism, pride, abuse, anger, cruelty, hatred. The list can go on. It seems Bhumata was unable to bear the burden of this rising Asuri Sampad. Everyone, Bhagavan says, yes, it is okay to accumulate some kind of Sampad. People thought any Sampad is okay. Instead of Daivi Sampad, people started accumulating Asuri Sampad. And with the rise of Asuri Sampad, the rise of the demoniac nature, there was atrocities committed everywhere, and therefore Bhumata was in severe pain, and therefore she approaches Brahma and she recounts all the atrocities that are happening, and Brahma says, together with Paramashiva and all the Devatas, they reach the Kshirabdhi, and as they reach Kshirabdhi, then they get the glorious vision of Vasudeva on the Kshirabdhi, the view of Vasudeva. Tatra gatva Jagannatham Devadevam Vrishakapim. He is Devadevam Vrishakapim. Why is Vrishakapi? Vrishakapi is one who provides for everyone. All our provisions that we need in our life and living, in this life and hereafter, all kinds of rewards, dharmartha kama moksha. And he is also the one who also removes all the sufferings. Essentially, ishtaprapti, anishta nivritti, both come together. Therefore, he is Vrishakapi. Tatra gatva Jagannatham. The Jagannatha is reclined on Adisesha, on Kshirabdi. What a glorious vision that all the Devatas are blessed. And Purusham, Purusha Suktena, Sahasra Sirsha, Purusha, Sahasraksha, Sahasrabat, Sabhumim, Vishpato Vrutva, Atyadishtad Dashangulam, Purushaye Vedagum Sarvam, Yadbhutam, Yastabhavyam, Utamratatmasyena, Thirohati. They all begin to chant that glorious Purusha Sukta, worshipping that Purushottama. And as they, and Upataste Samahitaha, as they keep worshipping gently Bhagavan, who is in Yoga Nidra. Now, here there is a beautiful conversation that happens between Narayana and Brahma, as everybody is witnessing this. But interestingly, this conversation is happening without any verbal communication. Brahma is placing the request to Bhagavan, and Bhagavan is also answering Brahma, and now Brahma has got the answer. Now, Brahma looks around and then addresses the entire congregation there. He says, Puraiva pumsavadritho dharajvaraha bhavadbihi amsher edushupajanyantam yayavadvurvyabharam ishwareshwaraha swakala saktya kshapayamschared bhuvi. That Ishwareshwara, the Ishwara of Ishwaras, Jagannatha, he says, he's now addressing all the Devatas. Puraiva pumsavadritaha. You know what? We all came here to make a submission to Bhagavan, but he already knows what we are about to submit to him. He is already aware. And what is he aware of? Dharajvaraha, he says. The jvara that has gripped Dhara, Dharani, Bhumata, Bhudevi, jvara, that fever of darkness, that ignorance, the fever of adharma that has gripped Dharani. Bhagavan is already aware of that, and he has already started to work on addressing Bhumata's request. He says, and in that process, he's already taken the sankalpa. Sankalpa to descend in Yaduvamsha. And Bhagavan also has a request to all of you. What is the request? Bhavadbir amshair edushupajanyanta. This is again a very interesting parallel to what happened during Ramavatara. During Ramavatara also, when Brahma and all the Devatas, when they make the submission to Bhagavan, Bhagavan says, I will decide. The only difference is there they request him to descend as a human, and Bhagavan chooses Ikshvaku Vamsha. Here Bhagavan has already chosen the Yadu Vamsha. But the commonality here is there, after Bhagavan takes the Sankalpa, all the Devatas are also given a mission. All of you also should descend through various Amshas, and eventually you will work with Bhagavan to fulfill his mission. So we saw in the Ramayana how all the Vanaras are all Amshas of various Devatas. Here too, Brahma is making that request. Brahma says, Bhagavan is going to descend. He has chosen Yadu Vamsha. We already saw why Bhagavan chose Yadu Vamsha. Now he says, all of you, he says, Yedushupa Janyantam. When he say Yedushupa, Yedushu, we also need to include Yedushu and Kurushu. Now, we saw how the branching of the two lineages, Yadu and Puru. Eventually, Puru branches into Kuru Vamsha, all the Kauravas and the Pandavas. So, therefore, here, Bhagavan has clearly given instructions that all the Devatas must also, through their Amshas, must also descend in the Yadu Vamsha and in the Kuru Vamsha, because there are roles that are going to be assigned to each and every one of them. We already know, we all know Pandavas are born out of, are all Amshas of the Devatas. Similarly, there are several Yadus and Kurus who are all Amshas of various Devatas. So therefore, Swakala Saktya Kshapayams Chared Bhuvi. As long as Bhagavan is on the Bhumandala, continuing to carry out his Dharma Samstapana, all of you also have to play a role. Why this happens is, we already discussed this in Ramayana. Now, Bhagavan again demonstrates what Vedas teach. Now, Vedas teach that life has to be lived as a yajna. This is what Gita Krishna also teaches. Now, what is yajna? Yajna is a collaboration between, the yajna that we do is a collaboration between us and the Devatas. Every yajna is actually a collaboration. Therefore, there is no act that we can do on our own. Everything that we do, we are actually collaborating with various cosmic forces, with various Devatas. So therefore, Bhagavan says, even when I descend and perform any action, I will abide by my own principles laid out in the Vedas. Every action of mine, every cheshtita of mine will also be yajna, and therefore there will be collaboration from Devatas as well. And he says, every one of you will be assigned a role. Then, as Brahma continues to address, Bhagavan has already decided that even before he descends, he will send Sankarshana to manifest, and Sankarshana will appear as Balarama. And he says, why he will appear? To please Krishna. Balarama's avatara rahasya is very simple. No, Krishna's avatara rahasya, we can go at length talking about it. But Balarama's avatara rahasya is one sentence. To please Krishna. Nothing more, nothing less. And he goes on to say, along with Sankarshana, who will also manifest, Bhagavan Vishnu Maya will also manifest, and she will also play a very important role in this avatara. And then Shukha zooms in, he zooms in and goes to that sacred land of Mathura, which happens to be in the Surasena province. Surasena, the province gets a name Surasena. The whole region is called Surasena. No, Surasena is also a name of a king. There are multiple Surasenas. Now we need to know that in the lineage of Yadus, there are two branches. There are two lineages which branch out. There is one which is the Vrishti Vamsa. There is another Andhaka Vamsa. It is in the Vrishti Vamsa comes Satvata. After Satvata, after several descendants, comes Surasena. Who is Surasena? Father of Vasudeva. Surasena is also father of Kunti. Pritha. She was called Pritha. She became Kunti after being adopted by Kunti Bhoja. Now, this is the lineage of Surasena. lineage coming from Vrishni. That's why they are all called Vrishnis. The other parallel lineage is the lineage of Andhakas. From Andhakas come Ahuka. Of several descendants come Ahuka. Ahuka's son is Ugrasena. We all know the name Ugrasena. Ugrasena is the son and two sons, Ugrasena and Devaka. Devaka should also ring a bell. Devaka's daughter is the blessed Devaki. Ugrasena's son is Kamsa. So now Shuka brings the focus on this lineage at that point of where Shurasena, Vasudeva, who is also called Anaka Dundubhi. Why is called Anaka Dundubhi? It seems when Vasudeva was born to Shurasena, all the devatas were creating drum beats. Dundubhi. They were celebrating. Possibly they all know that Vasudeva is going to be instrumental for Krishna Avatara. And therefore, Vasudeva's birth is also auspicious, and Vasudeva, now the son of Surasena, is now engaged and is about to get married to daughter of Devaka, Devaki. Now Devaka is brother of Ugrasena. Now, Ugrasena's son is the mighty Kamsa. Now Shuka says, as the wedding happens, as the marriage procession starts, the wedding is over, the marriage procession starts. He says there is celebrations everywhere. Now, Devaki's father Devaka is overjoyed because he's got a son-in-law who is so very illustrious, and therefore he said, and therefore it seems he gave away 400 elephants, 10,000 horses, 1,800 chariots. We all possibly need to look at father-in-laws like this. Abundantly giving away without even asking, and with all the pomp and ceremony, the groom and the bride are now paraded in a chariot, and as Vasudeva and Devaki get on to the chariot, Kamsa, Devaki's brother, cousin brother, Ugrasena's son, Kamsa comes forward. Hey Devaki, give me the opportunity, give me the privilege to drive the chariot. So Kamsa takes over, and the streets of Mathura. Why is Mathura called Mathura? Swagunaihi sarvachittasya mathanad vilopanad Mathura. Swagunaihi sarvachittasya mathanad. It seems Mathura is a place where all the great gunas, people have all kinds of good gunas. Mathanat, good qualities are churned. That is the reason why Krishna possibly likes churning of butter, and therefore he chooses birthplace of Mathura. And Mathura is celebrating. There is music everywhere. The streets are filled with people. Everybody is rejoicing. Kamsa is driving the chariot with Vasudeva and Devaki, both of them beaming, very happy. And as they begin their married life, their journey, as it's going on, all of a sudden there is a Ashiriri Vak, an unembodied voice, a thunderous voice that is heard by everybody. Everybody starts to look up what's going on. And that thunderous voice addresses Kamsa, hey Murkha, what are you doing? Kamsa doesn't understand for a moment. He says, let me declare, the Ashtama Garbha Devati will be the cause of your death. It was like lightning striking Kamsa. Then and there, the benevolent Kamsa transforms into a malevolent Kamsa. He is enraged, he is envious. All of a sudden, he looks at Devaki not anymore as his sister, but as the enemy, as his nemesis. And immediately he jumps and holds her hair, and he takes the sword, and he is almost about to chop her head off. Now, Vasudeva immediately gets into action. Now, Vasudeva is a very wise man. He comes in between and he stops Kamsa. Says, Kamsa, stop, listen to me for a moment. Immediately Shuka says, Vasudeva is a Mahabhaga, he says. Now, who is a Mahabhaga? Mahabhaga can be somebody who is most fortunate, but Mahabhaga is also someone who has a calm, serene mind, who is able to face any kind of situation. Now, here is a situation where Devaki is about to be killed, but Vasudeva is calm, cool, collected, is Mahabhaga. And he looks at Kamsa. He says, I need to somehow do something. And Shuka immediately says, hey Parikshit, you know what Vasudeva did? First he adopted the tactic of Sama. Essentially looking at Kamsa and speaking all the kind words. Slaganiya Gunaha. Hey Kamsa, you are the most virtuous. Everybody is wondering what's going on. Here is Kamsa with his sword standing there and he is praising him. You are so noble, Kamsa. You cannot do this. You are not the one who can do this. You are Bhoja Yashakaraha. You are in the Vamsa of Bhojas. You are the gem. You are the one who will bring Kirti. So therefore you cannot do this. So he uses Sama. Doesn't work. Kamsa is hell-bent on killing Devaki. Then Vasudeva uses Nyaya, Tarka. No, here there is a brilliant conversation that Vasudeva has with Kamsa, which also demonstrates how knowledgeable Vasudeva is. He says, Mrityur Janmavatam Veera Dehena Sahajayate Adyavabda Sathanteva Mrityurvai Praninam Dhruvaha. No, now he is using logic. Hey Kamsa, you must realize, out of fear of death, you are about to kill Devaki. But you as well as I know, Kamsa is also a very learned person. You as well as I know, nobody can escape death. So therefore, by killing Devaki now, all that you are doing, out of fear killing Devaki now, all that you are doing is only delaying death a little. Death is anyway going to come to you. Now, by killing her, you are actually accumulating Papa Karma, which is going to come back as a boomerang and hit you. And he says, you as well as I know, hey Kamsa, when death comes, then after death, you will once again get another life where you will be accountable for your actions that you have already done. Why do you want to accumulate Papa Karma and face dire consequences? No, he is using the Vedanta Vakyas, he is using Nyaya, Tarka to convince Kamsa, and he gives two beautiful examples. Profound examples. He says, Kamsa, realize this. Let me give you an analogy. Let me give an analogy to explain how a Jivatma in samsara, even before death, its destiny is determined after death, he says. He says, let's take the analogy of a person who is walking. When a person is walking, now what does he do? Let's say he takes, from wherever he is, he takes his left leg and puts it forward. Now, as he puts his left leg forward, he has to firmly ground it there before he can lift his right leg and then take the right leg forward. Similarly, the jiva, even before death, through its repeated karmas that is doing, also determines what is going to ensue after death. He also says, let me also give you another example. A leech which is there on a blade of grass, before it leaves this one blade of grass, it first leans on to the second one. After leaning on to the second blade of grass, then it relinquishes the first blade of grass. That's how it keeps moving. Similarly, a Jivatma keeps moving from one life to the other, but right in this very life, it already, through its current karma, it is already determining what kind of experiences, what kind of afterlife it's going to have. So therefore, let me tell you, Kamsa, if you kill Devaki now, you are not escaping from death. You are worried about death, therefore you want to kill Devaki, but death is going to come on top of it. The consequences of your Papa Karma are going to be unimaginable. Very nice tarka, very nice logic. Kamsa is not ready to listen. Kamsa says, what is, I'm going to kill your wife, you're going talking to me logic? Then he says, Sama did not work, Nyaya did not work, let me at least use Bheda, instill doubt. And then he says, don't you have fear? Hey Kamsa, you are now in fear of death coming, but then don't you fear the consequences of Papa Karma? All that what is going to happen? He says the list of consequences of any Papa Karma can be very, very drastic. Kamsa is not ready to listen at all. Vasudeva starts thinking. Shukha beautifully captures the thought process of Vasudeva. Vasudeva is thinking, what should I do now? This Kamsa is about to kill Devaki. Now I have to save Devaki now somehow. But then, how do I save her? Now, I do not know what is going to happen in the future. Whether Kamsa is going to be alive or not alive in the coming months, in the coming years. Whether my children will survive or not survive. Whether any of them will be able to kill him, not kill him. I have no idea what is going to go on. And he says, Agner yata daru viyoga yogayor adrishtanyan nimittamasti evam hi jantorapi durvibhavyaha sharira samyoga viyoga hetuhu. Just as a fire leaps, when there are many logs of wood, the fire need not go in one sequence. The fire can leap over one piece of wood and set the another piece of wood to fire. So therefore, similarly, prarabdha is beyond my control. What is in my control is to stop Kamsa from killing Devaki. I have a duty to protect Devaki that may be in my control now. So come what may, I will save Devaki right now, he says. And then, how does he save Devaki? He immediately looks at Kamsa and he says, hey Kamsa, you should have nothing to fear actually from Devaki. Kamsa says, why you are saying that? Can you rewind and listen to what was foretold, the prophecy that was made? Yes, very much. The prophecy that was made was, Devaki's Ashtama Garbha will be the cause of my death. So Vasudeva says, see, what did the prophecy say? Devaki's Ashtama Garbha, not Devaki. So why are you killing Devaki? He says, but then it is Ashtama Garbha through Devaki, so I have to kill Devaki. Let me make a promise to you. Every son born to Devaki, I will hand over to you. And the child will be at your mercy. So therefore, there is no threat from Devaki. Why should you kill Devaki right now? I promise to deliver all our sons to you. This is a solemn promise that I am making right here in front of everyone. Now, Kamsa is convinced. Kamsa, because he knows that Vasudeva is truthful. Vasudeva is noble. Therefore, what does Kamsa do? He says, this sounds like a good deal. So therefore, let's settle for this. I will wait. I will wait. Therefore, you are set free. Not many know that it is not then that Vasudeva and Devaki are imprisoned. Devaki and Vasudeva now are set free. Kamsa goes his way. Vasudeva and Devaki go their way. 1 year they live happily. And then the first child of Devaki happens. Devaki gives birth to Kirtiman. Now, before we look into what happens to Kirtiman, we also need to address this question that many of us have. Why should 6 poor little children be mercilessly be sacrificed? Why should 6 children be killed? Why? What is the reason behind it? For this, we have to go back in the history of time. Brahma's putra, Manasa putra, Marichi had 6 sons. Smara, Udgita, Parishvanga, Patanga, Kshudrabrata, Grini. 6 sons of Marichi. These 6 sons of Marichi were cursed to be born as Asuras. And therefore, what happens to them? Smara, Udgita, Parishvanga, Patanga, Kshudrabrata, Grini. These 6 sons are born as sons of Kalanemi. Who is Kalanemi? Kalanemi is the cousin of the notorious Hiranyakashipu. Hiranyakashipu's cousin, Kalanemi. Now, these 6 sons of Marichi, because of their curse, they are born as Rakshasas. Now, even though they are born as Rakshasas, there is that little bit of that Vasaras. Therefore, they are also very austere. Because they are Rakshasas, they are also worried. And how are they born? As sons of Kalanemi, Hamsa, Suvikrama, Krata, Damana, Ripumardana, Krodahanta. Together they are called Shad Garbhas of Kalanemi. 6 children of Kalanemi. Now they are worried because they are born as Rakshasas. They then decide to do tapasya to Brahma. So they do tapasya to Brahma, and then Brahma appears. And then they seek boons. They say, may we not be killed by any devata. May we not be killed by any devata, by any manushya. And Brahma duly grants the boons. Now, the problem begins there. Brahma has given them boons. Hiranyakashipu gets to know this. Hiranyakashipu is furious. How can they go and worship Brahma when the Lord of all Lords, Hiranyakashipu, is ruling the Brahmanda? They should have come and worshipped me. Therefore he says, I curse you. Another curse to the children of Kalanemi. I curse you that you will be killed by your own father. Not in the Janma, you will be reborn. The sons of Kalanemi are reborn as the first 6 Garbhas of Devaki. Kritiman, Sushena, Bhadrasena, Riju, Sammardhana, Bhadra. If somebody asks who are the brothers of Krishna, not just Balarama, there are other brothers too. Unfortunately, they are short-lived, but they all have illustrious long history. So they are reborn, and because of this curse, they were anyway cursed to be killed. Now, Kalanemi takes birth as Kamsa. So therefore now, Kamsa has to kill the 6 Ashtama Garbhas, and therefore the first son who? Kirtiman is born. Kirtiman, what a brilliant name. Kirtiman. Obviously, he is Kirtiman because he is the eldest brother of Krishna. Kirtiman, eldest brother of Krishna, elder than Balarama as well. So this Kirtiman is born, and Vasudeva and Devaki are happy, but at the same time, they also are in a state of sorrow because now Vasudeva has to keep up his promise. He has to hand over. What do? They immediately hand over because a promise is a promise. Now, Shuka says, as Kirtiman was born, immediately Vasudeva takes Kirtiman from the lap of Devaki, takes him all the way to Kamsa. Parikshit is shuddering. Parikshit is shuddering because how can that little child, after just as birth, be taken mercilessly to be slaughtered? Parikshit is wondering. Shuka looks at Parikshit. Shuka says, I know the questions that you are going to ask. Kim dussaham nusadhunam vidusham kim apekshitam kim akaryam kadaryanam dustyajam kim dhritatmanam. Sukha looks at Parikshit and says, Kim dussaham nusadhunam. I know, Parikshit, what the question that you have. How can Vasudeva and Devaki be so very merciless and hand over their child to Kamsa, knowing that that child is going to be killed? How can they do that? Let me give you an answer, Parikshit. Kim dussaham nusadhunam. What is difficult for great bhaktas like Devaki and Vasudeva? They can tolerate every kind of pain in samsara. So therefore, this pain of separation from their child immediately after the birth, this pain of taking the child to be mercilessly slaughtered, this pain is something they can tolerate. They are great sadhus, great jnanis, he says. And he goes on to say, Vidusham kim apekshitam. Hey Parikshit, the wise are not dependent on anything material. They are only dependent on Bhagavan. Therefore, they are ever ready to renounce everything and anything for the sake of Bhagavan. Now, Parikshit's question is, how can Kamsa accept this little child and kill the little child? Sukha says, I know this is the question you will ask. He says, Kimakaryam kadaryana. What do you expect foolish, mean, wicked people to do other than doing forbidden jobs like this? What do you expect? And he goes on to say, Dustyajam kim dhritatmanam. For those, dhritatmanam. Who is a dhritatma? The one who has mastered their mind. Devaki and Vasudeva are very, very blessed. because they are going to be rewarded with the reward of all rewards. Devaki, the reward that nobody can ever imagine, the reward of carrying Purushottama, the reward of carrying the Vishweshwara, the Paramatma in a very womb. That is the reward that Devaki is going to get. How difficult it is going to be for her to renounce everything for the sake of that reward. Vasudeva and Devaki are those who have mastered their minds. Dustyajam, this is not difficult at all to renounce for them. Therefore, this is the greatest sacrifice. This also is a great lesson which says, greater the magnitude of a dharmic sacrifice that one does, greater is the reward. Devaki and Vasudeva have done unimaginable sacrifice. None of us can ever think of anything like that. But then they were rewarded. Krishna himself was born as this child. What kind of reward of all rewards? Therefore, Shukha says, Hey Parikshit, therefore Vasudeva was bold enough. He mustered all the courage to take Kirtiman to Kamsa. Kamsa looks at Kirti, the little child, and looks at Vasudeva and says, Hey Vasudeva, after all, it is the Ashtamagarbha which is going to be cause of my death. So therefore, you have rightly named your child as Kirtiman. May he live long. You can take him back. Vasudeva is shocked. We are also shocked. What is going to happen next? We have to wait for another 1 week. Sarvam Sri Krishna Arpanamastu.